Hi, if you are in Ontario, Canada, Toronto, December 5th, which is tomorrow, please come down to Queen's Park and rally against Bill 45. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my last video that I put up. I talk all about it, I explain it all, and you really need to be there if you're in Ontario.
Swinging on and happy, hippie, yeah. Hippie, yeah.
What's up YouTube, welcome back to Whacked Out ECIG. This is the Cthulhu V2. It's a rebuildable tank atomizer, or RTA, that holds 4.7 milliliters of e-liquid. In this video, I am going to show you everything that comes in the box. I'm going to show you how I installed a dual Clapton build into this, how I whipped it, and then we'll come back up and we'll talk about how it vapes. So without wasting any of your time, let's go do all that shit. So this is the little box that the Cthulhu V2 RTA comes in. Pops open like that, like a clamshell kind of thing, and there's a bunch of little stuff in here. So first thing you'll notice probably is this replacement deck, and it's for a single coil. So I'll be putting up a build tutorial for this separately, but I think that's pretty cool. And the O-ring is not supposed to fall off. You also get a frosted glass replacement, which I think is pretty cool. I might actually use this in the video. Then you get a spare drip tip. That's Delrin instead of the metal one that comes with it. And if I can get these out, a little bag of spares if you can eventually get it out of the box. That comes with pre-built coils and O-rings and a screwdriver and whatnot. A lot of stuff in here. So this is the V2 Cthulhu, completely broken down. I initially had the deck taken out to show you what it would look like completely disassembled, but this is a bitch to get back in. So when you take out the base here, the 510 pin is connected to that pin holding down the positive block, and to get it back in you have to kind of unscrew it completely and then screw this back in, and yeah, it's a bitch to get back in. In the next video where I do a build tutorial for the single coil, I guess I'll show you how to do it, but for now, do not take out this deck unless you either really want to switch to a single or unless you really need to. So yeah, disclaimer I guess. Also at the bottom you get the airflow, which is nice and smooth. It's not too loose, it's not going to move by itself, but it moves pretty freely. This part goes back onto there. This is the chimney part, very simply threaded right on top. Threads are kind of crunchy, considering. The glass then just is press fit with the O-rings. You kind of have to hold it in place while you screw the top cap in. And once that's screwed in, you can see that that's where you fill it. It is a top fill tank. And then this part screws into it. It doesn't pop out, which is kind of a good thing because there's absolutely no grip on this thing. And if you're supposed to pull it out, it would be pretty much impossible to fill it. And then the drip tip just sits in there. And that's it, completely assembled. So yeah, let's pop a build in here. And this is all you need to set up this build. So first of all, you're going to need 2 strands about 6 inches long of Clapton wire. And if I can zoom into this and kind of focus, it might not be able to pick up. It kind of just looks like regular Canthal wire, but this is 26 gauge Canthal wire with 34 gauge wrapped around it. You can pick up pre-made Clapton wires all over the place. They're made by UD, and I just made it myself. So either way, there's tutorials as well if you want to find out online where to make some Clapton wire. I don't really have the positioning and apparatus, camera, jigs, all that stuff to show you how to make a Clapton yet, but yeah, you can find it pretty much everywhere nowadays. So just search around. You're going to need something to wrap the coils around. I'm using this Coilmaster V3. It's been pretty useful, and I haven't tried it with Clapton's yet, so we'll see how it goes. Scissors to cut your cotton and stuff. Tweezers so that you can pinch the coils and pulse them, make sure they're glowing evenly. Some wire cutters and wicking material. I'm using some Japanese organic cotton. And that's about it. Alright, so I'm using a 2.5mm rod to wrap these coils around. You can fit a bigger coil inside of the Cthulhu, but since these are Claptons, they're slightly thicker and I just kind of want to play on the safe side. So we thread it through there, take the 2.5 end, slide it through, and we'll see if this can catch it. This is going to be very difficult on camera to put it sideways, so there we go, and we'll just wrap. Okay, so that's 7 wraps done. Sorry if it didn't pick up on camera that well, but there are tutorials everywhere how to use the Coilmaster, and there's nothing different about this one. So I pop it back on to the rod so that I can fix this lead. And I don't want to mess up the build, but I kind of just want to pull it to the end. You can push it up against the ridge there. And you can see that's Clapton wire there. And there we go, that's one coil down. I'm going to wrap another. And there we go. 2 fresh Clapton wires. 7 wraps each around a 2.5mm bit. Let's install these into the Cthulhu. Okay, so this is the velocity deck in the Cthulhu all ready to go. To unscrew the screws, you're going to need an Allen key. I don't think it came with one. I lose track of them very quickly, but I really don't think that this one came with it. This is probably the hardest one I've had to get on camera, so bear with me on this one. Get one in the top right and one in the top left. And the reason I do that is because you can see one of the leads is going over and one of them is going under. Having one in the bottom and one in the top makes it fit a lot easier. And while using this rod, you just kind of want to hold the coil in place, but pull through the back as well so that it sits there evenly. And that looks pretty good right now, I have to say. So I'll focus that again, and we just want to screw in these leads. The coil will split up a tiny bit, but we can fix that after. Okay, so I have to use my left hand for this. Wrap it around. I'm just screwing in the bottom left post now. And it does help to hold the coil in place, but at the angle I'm doing this is pretty difficult. Okay, so that's one coil down. We'll use our wire cutters now, put it right up against the edge and snip. Always holding the wire, because if you don't, it'll snap off, fly somewhere, and you'll never be able to find it again. There we go, that's one coil installed. Again, one in the bottom left, one in the top right. Hold the coil in place with that bar and pull the leads through the ends. You don't have to worry about messing up the coil because, like I said, we can fix it after, but you're going to want to pull the coil as close as you can to the posts without actually touching them. Because if you touch them, it'll short out and then it won't fire and you have to start all over again, so no one wants that. That's one screwed in. While I do this, I use my index finger and just hold the coil in place to make sure that it's not going anywhere. But it will always move slightly. And these screws are really nice. They're really smooth. Probably the smoothest screws I've ever used in an RTA or Atomizer at all. But they don't cut the wires, which is nice. So now this part is a little bit more tricky, trying to cut these leads without cutting the rest of the wire, but if you have these wire cutters, it's not that bad. And there we go. So that's what this will look like right now. Alright, so we have our coils installed. Right now it's reading 0.43. That will change a bit once we fix up these coils. So let's dry fire them. And this iJoy is so low. If you can hear this, it's making that awful noise. Pulse width, that's what happens. So I'm just gonna play around with these. I wanna heat them up until they're glowing and then squeeze them together. And what we're looking for is for both of the coils to heat up at the same time from the inside out. And Claptons do get a lot more hot spots, which are certain points of the coil heating up faster than others. Claptons are a bit tougher to nail, but once you get out those hot spots, they work well. So I'm going to brush, and I call this coil magic because I don't know how it works. Apparently it's kind of spreading the electrons, but that's looking pretty good right now. Heating from the inside out, roughly the exact same time. Now, I need to make sure that I can put the deck on top without touching. And I don't think I can. You can see the coils are kind of burning the inside of this. That is a bad thing. So let me sort this out, see if I can fix it. Okay, so finally I think I've got this down. The coils are much closer to the post, so they shouldn't be blocking the rest of the tank. The coils are heating up nice and evenly. And we'll put some cotton in there. So I found out why it was so difficult for me to focus this entire time. It's because it was on way too big of a mod. So I have this Cloudpore Mini here. You can see this a lot better now. What I'm going to do is grab some of my Japanese organic cotton and slice off a couple pieces. So I always generally eye it, but these are 2.5 millimeter coils, so I'll go for about 3. That's 1. And that's 2. So I'm going to take a strand of cotton, roll it into a ball. Not a ball, a cylinder. And as always, keep your hands as clean as possible before dealing with the cotton. If you can, use gloves, but I just prefer to clean up my hands a bit because you don't want the flavor of the oil in your hands to leach onto that cotton. Let me focus this. When you're pulling the cotton through, you want to feel resistance, but you don't want the coil to move, and you don't want the cotton to break. You just kind of want it even on both sides and a little bit of resistance so that if I tug on one side, everything moves instead of the cotton coming through. Now this is probably the trickiest part of the whole build. If you can see this ring on the deck there, you want the cotton to be going through this hole there, but not coming past that ring. So I kind of want to eye it, and I'll cut it kind of in flush with the deck. I like to cut it diagonally as well. And that might be a bit too much, but we'll see how it goes. Turn around, do the same thing. Both of my wicks are in. I'm going to take some juice. I'm using this My Man by One Hit Wonder e-liquid. It's supposed to be like a Neapolitan ice cream flavor, but what I'm using it for is to wet the wicks, because as soon as you add liquid to cotton, it becomes very, very easy to manipulate and change into the shape and position that you want it to be in. So I'm just going to soak them up. And I'll take my little Allen key and try to do this properly on camera. So I'm going to want to take
the back end of the cotton of the wick and just put it into that hole in the back and then in the front, and let it sit right there. So you can see it's not coming through that hole, but it's still blocking that so it doesn't flood. Take her on the other end, and you can spend a little bit more time than I did on getting the right size wicks, making them even on either side and stuff, but this should work just fine for now. I like to brush up against the coil as well to make sure there's no holes in the cotton that could potentially lead to the coil or the cotton getting too dry, because if you don't know by now, dry hits are the worst thing in vaping. So brush it up, push some in as well. And whenever I build any RTA, I always brush up against the coil for that same reason. Okay, so I'll add a little bit more liquid onto here and see if it's firing. What I like about Clapton coils is they tend to absorb liquid into themselves, not just into the cotton, because it's kind of like, people call it capillaries. That's a good way of putting it, I guess. 0.52 coil after. We're just going to put a little bit of power through it to start absorbing and heating up that liquid. Okay, now I can see that this end of the cotton needs to be brushed up, because I don't want it to be blocked by the chimney as well. So there we go. This just sits right on top of there and it screws in. And here is where we pray that there is no short. And it's working. 0.46, it jumped a bit, but that's okay, it should be alright. Take off the top, unscrew it, don't drop it like I just did. There's your fill ports, and just squeeze. It's pretty simple. And this bottle could go empty any second now, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, and the bottle's empty, but it's just about full. Screw back on the drip tip. And I'll take off this drip tip and put in my own, because I think that looks nice. Let's go back up top and vape on it.
If I had gotten this tank a few months ago, this would be my favorite tank ever. Because to be able to throw a dual Clapton build into a tank, vape it at 50 plus watts, and just get massive clouds out of it, and decent flavor, I would have used this all day, every day. It probably would have replaced my drippers. But now, for the way I like to vape, the majority of the time I'm doing a mouth to lung inhale. So very, very different from this. I like a more concentrated chimney so that I get I want to say more flavor, because for me it's more flavor, but some people prefer a very warm vape, and they say that that's what gives them more flavor. It's all about preference, but the flavor in this is just not up to my personal standard, if that makes sense. The juice I have in here is My Man by One Hit Wonder E-Liquid, and it tastes okay. The only thing is, it's very hot and warm, and I feel like I'm not getting I know for a fact I don't get the same flavor that I do out of even the i320. It's just a completely different experience. But if you like to blow huge clouds, get a really warm to hot vape with that kind of flavor and that kind of mouthfeel, I guess, I think you'll really enjoy this one, especially because it holds 4.7 mils of juice. Very necessary considering how much power you can put through this and how quickly it'll drink through the juice. So Let me blow a cloud real quick and see what we can do with this. 50 watts. Bit much for my liking. You know, I like to vape on something like this. So a completely different experience, but I can definitely appreciate the vape that I get off of this. It's pretty intense. The airflow is very smooth. I enjoy that about it, but there are some cons. Okay. First of all, I think they could have done the refilling kind of mechanism better. I don't think that having no knurling on the top there where you twist it is a good idea, because especially if you have juice on your hands or there's juice on this, if you try and spin it, it's going to be very difficult to get it off, and then screwing it back on, you know, you have to push through an O-ring and everything, so that could have been done a lot better. The deck is, it's not hard to build on and it's not hard to wick, but once you take out the deck and try and replace it with the other deck, that's where it gets kind of complicated and you could have some problems there. I had never done it personally before this video and I fucked it up majorly. So I eventually got it done properly and got everything working again, so it's working well now, but that's something to note for sure. But the fact that you can replace the deck is a massive pro for this thing, because like the Steam Crave Aromizer, being able to switch out the deck will maintain the longevity of this tank. It won't go out of style, I guess, as quickly, because if a new type of deck comes out, like how the Velocity deck was a new deck, if something like that comes out, they can just make another one and add it into this and you could buy it separately. So I think that's a really good idea, and that's about it. It's a big tank that holds a lot of juice, has nice smooth airflow, not the kind of flavor I like to get out of it, not the kind of vape I like to get out of it, but if you're into that kind of thing, especially if you enjoy building Claptons and stuff like that, being able to fit big cool coils in here is definitely a pro. So I'll take another hit off of this. And that's about it. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave a comment. If you've ever tried this before, if you have one, if it's your favorite tank, let people know why. If it's not your favorite tank, let people know why in the comments. In the future, probably tomorrow, I'll probably film it after this tank is empty. I want to put a vertical Clapton build in the single coil deck, so that will be coming soon. If I really can't get it done, if it proves to be too difficult, I won't do it, but that's kind of what I'm planning to do right now. And yeah, I got this from Haystown Vapes. They're a Canadian company. I believe they're in Vaughan, Ontario, and it costs about $50. I think it's $49.99. So considering that you can take out the deck and put in different ones, considering it comes with an extra glass, a frosted glass as well, considering it's top fill, considering it has good airflow, considering it has juice flow control, which I didn't mention before, but that's if you want that kind of thing, if you like really thin juices, which I'm not sure why you would want to in something that you can build such crazy coils in, and it's kind of made for that. Anyway, all those things make it a very good device, and Siri just recorded everything that I said for the past minute and a half, so that's always nice. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.